I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Pauly Freeman. Paul was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. After high school, he joined the Navy. He did a 20-year career in the Navy as a jet mechanic and was assigned to multiple aircraft carriers and squadrons. At the time of retirement, he was the aircraft maintenance chief for a F-18 Squadron based in Fort Worth, Texas, called the VFA-201 Hunters. He lives in St. Charles, Illinois, and is married to his wife, Francine, who is a nurse. They have 3 children. One daughter lives in San Francisco and works as a speech therapist. One son just graduated from the University of Tennessee, and another son is attending Purdue. His nickname or call sign is Pauly and has been his entire life. He is a graduate of the Embry Aeronautical University with a bachelor's in science in aircraft maintenance technology and a master's in aerospace operations. He is an adjunct professor at Embry-Riddle. Paul still works in the aviation industry as a commercial pilot and flight instructor for small aircraft. He enjoys great Chicago pizza, all sports. He's a Bears and Cubs fan, and he loves playing golf and listening to live music. He has published 2 books called The Home Away from Home and The Legendary Hunters of Texas. Both of these books can be purchased on Amazon and come in paperback, hardcover, or ebook. All book proceeds get donated to the Gary Sinise Foundation to help veterans in need. Welcome to the show, Pauly.
Good morning, Kara. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Well, this is an excellent bio about you, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, well, okay. I'm like I said in the bio, retired Navy chief, and I currently live in St. Charles with my wife Francine, and I got my boys Joseph and Andrew here, and my daughter Taylor in San Francisco, which I'm walking her down the aisle next week in Napa Valley at her wedding in my Chiefs uniform.
Oh, congratulations. How exciting.
Yeah. I had to do some modifications to my Chiefs uniform because it shrunk over the years.
I bet it did. Fabric tends to do that, right?
Yeah. So anyways, I got involved in book writing because years back I was doing supporting the 22 Kill program and 22 Kill it's an organization that represents the veterans and brings awareness to veterans that are struggling with PTSD. So 22 Kill, you had to do 22 push-ups for 22 days, and every day you did your 22 push-ups, you called somebody out, and you challenged them to the task. And it was just to spread the word about PTSD.
And I've seen that. Now that you say that with the 22 push-ups, I've definitely seen that. So
yeah. And so the last day of the 22 Kill program for me, I went out to my base that I had retired from in Fort Worth, Texas, Naval Air Station, Fort Worth, Texas, Joint Reserve Base. And I was doing the push-ups in front of our F-18 static display outside the front gate.
Okay.
And I was doing it, yeah. And then after that, I went back, I drove on the base and I went to the old hangar, and the hangar was just, the hangar had, all the memories were gone. The silhouette we had painted on the outside of the building and all that was gone. So I got on the Facebook page, Squadron Facebook page, and I winked to the troops and I said, "Hey guys, our history's gone. We were the first we were the first fighter squadron in naval history to go to combat, get called up to go do the combat, and we have no history. It's gone. Our hangars, just looks like an empty building." Wow. And they on the Facebook page, everybody, my shipmates voluntold me to write a book about it.
Okay.
About our unit. Yeah, and I'm like, "Hey guys, I don't write a book." "Oh, come on, Chief, you can do the book." And then everybody started chiming in. "Yeah, I vote for you to write the book." And so anyways, I said, "Okay, guys, I'll write the book. I'll write a documentary on the squadron, and then I will donate all the money to the veterans so that we can make a difference as VFA-201 Hunters even though it's decommissioned. The squadron was decommissioned in '07, and our building looks like just a bunch of bricks. We could still make a difference through that method. So that was kind of how I got started. And then the recent book, Home Away from Home, I hadn't written a book in a couple of years, and I'm not a big time author, Kara. Certainly I can write a paragraph. Yeah, I could put words together and all that, but I'm not like a Hemingway, obviously, or a big time author. So what I write about are things that I'm passionate about, which makes it easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first book, Legendary Hunters of Texas, I was in that unit for 7 years. I easily could have written a book about that, and I did a little book. And then Home Away from Home is more curtailed around I came in the Navy in '84, and I was on that USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier for 4 years.
Okay.
And during that time, I was a kid coming out of Chicago. I was heavily involved in sports, but how could a kid from Chicago, growing up on the north side, end up on an aircraft carrier? So anyways, I joined the Navy due to my grandpa, who lived with us, and he was a Navy guy at one time, had a Navy ring on, and
okay,
he used to tap that ring on his little table upstairs in our house, in my sophomore year of high school or junior year of high school, and said, "What are you going to do after the Navy?" I go, "I'm going to University of Texas, El Paso. I'm going to go play football." He goes, "No, you're not." And I go, "What?" He goes, "You're going in the Navy." I go, "I'm going in the Navy." He goes, "Yeah." I go, "No, I'm not. All my friends are going to college. All my friends were, athletes of sports. That was my nucleus I hung out with throughout my life and growing up. So, and because of sports, growing up in the city, it kept me out of trouble. Yeah. There's a fork in the road when you grow up in the city, in a big city like Chicago. You can go right or you can go left. And if you go right, that's the good side. If you go left, you could find yourself in some trouble. So luckily for me, I enjoyed certain type of friends that had same interest, and we were all college bound type people and all that. So that really helped me out. But anyways, my grandpa said, "No, you're not going you're not going to UTEP. You're going to go down there and goof off." And I said, "No, I'm going to go to college." What are you going to do? I go, "I'll get a business degree." He goes, "You'll be back here in 2 years." I go, "Oh God, thanks." I said, "Thanks, Grandpa, for support." Yeah. No, thank you. He goes, "No, you'll be back here in 2 years. Guarantee it. Go in the Navy, get your college done there." I was like, I go, "Well, I can't go in as an officer because my grades are terrible." Okay. I wasn't a good student.
Sports were your thing.
Yeah, they were too much of my thing, and I didn't care about. I did enough. I went to a prep high school in Chicago. I actually got a scholarship from 8th grade to go there to play football.
Okay.
Yeah, so prep school, I didn't have to pay the tuition at this private Catholic high school. All I had to do was run with a football,
Okay.
Yeah, so that track, and then part of my work scholarship there was to run to manage the weight room at the high school, which was great, fit right up my alley.
Yeah.
Yeah, back then, and so I didn't do good in school, but so I went in as enlisted. I joined the Navy, and anyways, so the Home Away from Home is about the period growing up in the city, the conversation with Grandpa, and then my first 4 years on the ship. And I met a lot of friends that I still stay in touch with these days.
Yeah. That
we get together periodically from '84 to '88 timeframe.
Okay.
So I put their stories in the book as well.
Okay.
And so Home Away from Home is predicated on the same principle as the Legendary Hunters of Texas. All proceeds get donated to the Gary Sinise Foundation.
Yeah.
To help veterans. I don't make no money off these books. And the Gary Sinise connection, I was doing a book signing at an air show in Fort Worth, Texas, Blue Angels performing, and I had the Legendary Hunters book at the time that I just go there, I got my little booth and I sign books and whatever I can, I collect a couple $100 off of it over the weekend and throw it in the Gary Sinise Foundation. Well, unbeknownst to me, somebody had come up to my booth And said, yeah, I'd like a book. So I started explaining my mission, and they go, oh, we know about your mission. I'm Gary Sinise's promoter. And
Wow.
I went, oh, you are? I go, yeah. I go, so if I sign a book right now to Gary Sinise, you're going to give it to him? She goes, absolutely. She goes, so happens that Gary Sinise was doing the Dallas Fort Worth Snowball Express concert, Lieutenant Dan Band that he
Yeah.
does, like in a month from when I first met the promoter. She goes, you going to the concert? And I looked at my wife and her, and I go, no, we're not going to the concert. She goes, you come to the concert, you guys will be my guest, you sit with me, and
Oh,
all
so
that.
fun.
So I gave her a book, right? She goes, after the show, come find me and I'll give you the tickets to meet us there. So after the show, air show, we find her, and she walks over, she hands me the book back that I signed for Gary Sinise, and I said, why are you handing me the book back? And she goes, well, I just got off the phone with Gary, and he wants you to hand him the book at his concert.
Oh,
I said, you're kidding me. And she
yeah.
goes, no. So we go to the concert, moving forward a month later, we're sitting there up front with the promoter, and my wife and I, and promoter taps me in the middle of Lieutenant Dan Band's concert and goes, get ready. And I go, for what? She goes, you're going up on stage.
Oh,
And I says, what?
yeah.
My wife, I go, hey, I guess I'm going up on stage. So I could tell the promoter was talking to another promoter at the event while the band was doing their thing, and they said, "Oh no, hold on. We're going to go to his bus after the concert."
Okay.
I said, "Oh, okay." So after the concert, we followed her to the bus, and Gary Sinise pops out of his big bus and goes, "Hey, Chief Freeman, where are you?" And I look and I go, "Hey, sir." He comes over and he goes, "Don't call me sir, it's Gary, and I'm just wanting to meet you, Paul." And I'm like, "Wow!" So he made an impression on me because somebody his status, it takes time to talk to a guy like me that's throwing a couple $100 at the foundation. Anyways, he's from Chicago, so then that started a whole.
Yeah. There's always that connection there, right? If we're
yeah. So that added another 30 minutes to the conversation we had outside his bus, and so took a couple pictures, and it was an honor to meet him, and I believe in what he does. And veterans struggle. Some struggle, especially they struggle mostly on that transition from when you go from the military to civilian sector. And I was fortunate enough, I didn't struggle with that transition. I prepped myself to move on to another career after the Navy, but some folks like the Marines and the ground troops, those are the ones that are really, really seeing some awful things.
Yeah.
And I think, and I hate to call it post-traumatic stress syndrome disease, because I don't call it a disease. I hate that word disease. I think it's more, and I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I like to drop the D on it because they ran into some events that traumatized them.
Yeah.
It's not that they had some sort of infection in their body or something. It's what they saw.
Yeah.
So those folks that come out of those, the ones that really see the bad stuff, and some of them have problems adjusting. If you come out of the military and you didn't see any dramatic stuff, you still have a little bit of hard time adjusting because you're used to being in a unit.
Yeah.
You're used to working as a team and the camaraderie that you have. And when you go from the military to the civilian sector, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that because I feel like from hearing stories from my husband, it almost seems like a sports team in a way sometimes, especially like when he was just on this carrier, a few years back. They really worked as a team together. And I feel like maybe that gives you the similar things that you enjoyed from sports translated into your career in the Navy.
And then I was going to talk about that.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I totally.
Segue for my thoughts that I had that I was going to. So sports is the same concept, like you just said, Kara. You're used to being on a team, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, whatever, and you're all working together to win the game, and support your teammates in action and all that stuff. And athletes have the same kind of issues from transitioning I'm assuming more at the maybe the collegiate professional levels,
Yeah.
they played a little longer than high school folks like myself. Didn't go on to college and
Sure.
play ball because they didn't have a grandpa that was saying you're going in the Navy in high school.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was going to go play college football. But anyway, yeah, but I think they go through some of the similar transitions. Obviously, I'm not comparing athletes to military folks, but the dynamics of going from group dynamics to now I'm out here in the civilian sector. And okay, my identity was I was number 30. I was a running back on that football team. Well, now I'm not. Now I'm Paul, and whatever. I'm working at a warehouse driving a forklift now, and nobody knows me from heck of beans. But when you're number 30 running with a football, oh, everybody knows who Freeman is, or whoever, whoever. And it's the same with the military, the same concept. You come out of the military, you're used to having those folks that you worked with for 4 years, sometimes back-to-back tours. You might have been there 8 years with that same group, and then you come out of the civilian sector and you're a civilian. And, nothing compares to the dynamics of working in naval aviation, whether it be a maintenance chief, a mechanic, a pilot. Nothing compares to the camaraderie and the thrill and the experiences that you have when you have that kind of stuff and you go to transition to commercial aviation. There's just nothing that compares to it. I mean, F-18s taking off on a carrier, F-14, an afterburner, and then all the dynamics up on a flight deck, and just nothing compares to it.
For all age ranges, I think even my son and my husband, they just did the Tiger Cruise. With a friend actually, because my husband was on the carrier in the 2020 time period. So they were, of course, doing no Tiger Cruises at that point. And for listeners that you don't know what a Tiger Cruise is, essentially you can bring on your family member for a day to the aircraft carrier, and then they go out to sea. And they had an air show out there, and my son still, I mean, this was probably 6 months ago. He is still talking about when the F-18s were taking off and they did the sonic boom and showed them that. I mean, he's 7 and he's just fascinated by that experience.
I got involved. I like I said, I went in the military as an enlisted guy, and I was a jet engine mechanic. So basically the thing that enticed me about aviation is we lived on the final approach path at O'Hare Airport in Chicago. As a kid. And so me and my pops would sit out in the backyard and we would look at the tails of the airplanes flying over our house. And we'd be calling out, oh, that's United, that's American. And for me, there's some reason it drew me to the engines. That I'm like, those engines on those jets are interesting to me. I mean, it's crazy. How do they work? And well, lo and behold, I went in as a jet engine mechanic, I went in as an aviation bosun's mate first. And then when I realized I didn't want to do that, I just changed my MOS to jet engine mechanic. Anyways, so that's kind of some stuff.
Did your family do a lot of the moving around with you then as well?
At the time, no, not necessarily, because I did some moving around before I had a family, and then after I had a family, it was only just a couple moves, because I kind of homesteaded myself and stayed in one area.
Nice.
Yeah, so I didn't have to bounce too much, but I did over 20 years. I was on 3 aircraft carriers.
Wow.
Because all the squadrons I was in were aircraft carrier type jets.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time out at sea because of the mission and the type of jet. So I was A6s, which is a tail hook jet that goes out the carrier. F-14s, tail hook, they go out to the carriers, and F-18s, tail hook, they go out to the carriers.
Yeah.
So all the squadrons I was in were aircraft. They were carrier-based type squadrons.
Yeah. Were you gone a lot then, out to sea?
Yeah. Well, I would say out of 20 years, I spent total, I got over 5 years of actual sea time.
Wow.
And, I don't know I don't know if that's probably the average time. I would say there's folks out there, obviously, that, spent a lot more time in their 20-year career out at sea. But my total sea time was about 5 years total,
Yeah.
going from, I was on the John F. Kennedy periodically. The USS Carl Vinson was the first carrier, and that's what the Home Away from Home book's about. And then the Theodore Roosevelt was the last ship I was on, and that's when I was the maintenance chief for the F-18 Squadron. We did the shock and awe airstrikes into Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003.
Wow.
The initial airstrikes and all that stuff. And the reason we did that was the ground troops, special forces. We took out infrastructure stuff, comms, runways, so that special troops and so forth can move up to the northern border of Iraq. And that's kind of what our mission was back then.
So you retired then in 2004?
Yes, 2004.
Okay. Yep. All right. And were you in Texas at that time? Is that where you were stationed?
I was in Texas, and then I had moved to California and got into civil aviation. And I was I went from F-18s, managing F-18 jets, to managing Gulfstream jets for Wells Fargo executive folks out of California and oil people that had Gulfstreams. And I was the director of quality for that company. And then, a long story short, then I got the current job that I have, which I really can't, it's not like it's a secret job, but it's not related to, I can only talk about civilian aviation. I can only talk about military aviation. I can't talk about civil aviation because of what I do.
Okay. Yeah. And then, so when did you move back to Illinois then?
We moved back to Illinois last year, just over a year ago.
Okay.
We lived in Texas 26 years.
Okay.
And then came up here for family.
Okay.
And so we're up here for a while and spending time with family.
Yeah.
And we love St. Charles. We love the area, the house, all that. We're enjoying spending time with family. Being down from the South for so long, though, eventually we're going to probably migrate back to the South at some point.
Yeah.
The winters up here are brutal, as we knew all this coming back up here, but
yeah, I know it's been we've been away, I think 13 years now my husband's been in, and we've lived in very sunny, mild places. So to think about going back to Chicago winter is, I'm not sure that we'll be able to do it. Sorry, family.
yeah. It psychologically, it's really tough. Even now I struggle, but it is fun to see the family, and we'll be up here for a little bit, and then we'll migrate back down.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So, well, thank you for sharing all that. I had one other thought I had written down as you were talking about the PTS dropping the D. Is I feel like you're saying with the D, it just gives it such a negative connotation when this is their reality, right? And so, yeah.
I totally agree with that. I mean, it gives it a negative connotation, like there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with our troops that are exposed to awful things defending our freedoms in this country, and they sign on the dotted line, with their life to go defend our country and our freedoms. And so, and some pay the ultimate price, and others pay prices that they have to live with. And, mental disorders just in general is such a huge problem in our society these days, but I can definitely relate it to the military folks coming out, that some that have problems, and there's not a lot of support. So, the programs out there that are supposed to support us, and I'm not going to get into the names of them, but they don't do a really good job. So what you find is a lot of folks like me or other folks that do, are really heavily involved in supporting our veterans through different programs that they start up themselves, because they can't stand to see a fellow brother or sister rely on a system that doesn't take care of them properly.
Yeah.
So they outreach and they feel compelled to create their own programs where they could bring veterans in and just kind of give them some support and bring them around people that they're familiar with, they can talk to. Because a veteran that struggles with PTS is most likely from a traumatic military event, most likely is not going to talk to somebody that they can't relate to.
Yeah.
They'll talk to a fellow troop, that have common ground, and that's kind of a good thing about some of these programs that are out there. That are the Gary Sinise Foundation does so much for amputees, builds homes for these folks, and 22 Kill holds events, all these different programs out there. No Fallen Heroes, that's a friend of mine who was a pilot in our squadron.
Wow. Okay.
Matthew Wiz Buckley, he runs that program, and he has a couple L-39 jets that he flies around and takes people up in, and he's heavily involved in supporting our troops. My friend Richard Fleek, who runs the Scuttlebutt podcast show.
Okay.
What his show does is he brings on veterans that their stories are never told.
Yeah.
Nobody would know about it, but yet this person is seen combat and saved lives in battle, and he brings these veterans on his show, the Scuttlebutt podcast show, and he has them tell their stories, which is really cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that one out because
you might, because the Scuttlebutt podcast show, it's only been in existence for over a year.
Okay.
They won they are voted the #1 Navy podcast in the nation. They were #1 in the national awards. The Scuttlebutt podcast, it's Andrew Fair, who's a Marine, and Richard Fleek, who is my shipmate from back in 84 to 88, Carl Vinson days.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. That sounds really interesting.
Fallen Heroes. Matthew Wiz Buckley was an F-18 pilot in my squadron when I was the maintenance chief, and he's doing a lot of great things. Those two things, I always try and throw out a little bit of promotion for them guys.
Yeah. Well, we'll include all the links in the show notes as well, so people can find those too. So
sure.
Awesome. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk a little bit about who you are as a reader. So what type of books do you like to read?
Well, this is an easy segue. The first one I like to read. I actually like to read documentaries.
Okay.
I like to know what makes people. I like to know what makes people. What makes their heart beat to the drum? What drives them? What is their motivating force, factors, or what have you? I like stories about trials and tribulations. I'm a big Rocky fan.
Okay.
Yeah. I love. I know it's only a movie, but the story itself is somebody that comes up, has no options, no opportunities, and they go make their opportunities, and the struggles and tribulations they go through to get to where they're at is very intriguing to me. I like that.
Yeah.
But the books I'm going to talk about today, the 3 books are both, they're all military-based books, and that's kind of what I like to read. Military-based books is something I can relate to. I don't know if you want me to start talking about those 3 books or.
Yeah, actually, before we go to your book flight, I have one other question. Do you think you're going to write another book yourself? Do you have any other ideas?
Okay, so for me, as a writer, I'm a small-time writer. I got to get motivated, and something's got to catch. Something's got to stick, and I got to be like, yes, I want to do that. And right now, if something comes to me, I have some thoughts, but nothing tangible I can put my fingers on at this moment. But yeah, I probably will eventually write another book about something.
Yep. You're working it out in your head. I love that.
Yeah, it's like I used to do art as a kid.
Okay.
Well, imagination is what creates thoughts in writing, in my opinion. Just like art, when you're trying to draw something or paint something, you have an imagination, and you transform that to a piece of paper and a drawing. The same with writing for me. The books I wrote really quick was therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
Because when I wrote the books, I was reliving moments in time, and it was so cool. And I didn't know that was going to be the effect on the two books I wrote. But when I wrote them, every time I wrote one of those books, it put me back in time, and and I just felt like it was a great experience for me.
Yeah. Well, I already know what I'm buying my husband for Father's Day.
Home away from home.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, he'll love that. So, and this will air after Father's Day, so it'll be good.
I'll get you a hardcover copy.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so let's talk about your book flight. So we have the military base books. What is the first book of the book flight that we'll talk about today?
Well, I know this isn't going to be on the video,
Yep. Okay.
Gary Sinise, A Grateful American.
I didn't know he wrote a book, so I'm so intrigued to hear about this.
Yes, A Journey from Self to Service.
Okay.
Yeah. So Gary obviously is a, well-known actor, and he was Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump, and he was on Law and Order, and he had some dealings with troops over his time because of his being so famous and all that. He apparently he got involved with, he wanted to do something for the troops, something greater than himself, and it talks about that, and how he created the foundation, and so I found it to be a really good read. Obviously, I'm a little biased, because I'm a big Sinise fan, but so yeah, that's generally what the book is about how he got involved with supporting the troops, and all the work that's involved for him and his band, and all the I guess responsibilities he has now because he's doing this Gary Sinise Foundation, and how much work's involved, to travel. And I mean, he goes to all these he like Bob Hope used to do back way before our day. He used to go perform for the troops and all over the world, and he talks about that in his book, and Grateful American, A Journey from Self to Service, Gary Sinise. So a lot of sacrifices on his part too, and so I found it to be a good read.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You had said, I like books that kind of tell me why people did what they did. And it sounds like this book fits right in there for you.
Yeah.
He actually just did an event out here in San Diego that we went to a few months ago, and it was top notch. I mean, there was everything. You just walked in and it was great. And, he was out walking around amongst the people as well, right? Like he wasn't hiding in the back. And they actually had Robert Irvine, the chef. He cooked all the food. And they were just out amongst us, which I found so, interesting, because I would think, they're super famous. They'd be mobbed by all these people, but people were very respectful of them as well, right? Like they knew they were running the event, and you could tell they were walking around trying to make sure things were taken care of and people weren't mobbing them, but it was so fun. It was a really great event and very family oriented.
Gary Sinise in conversation is very humble. And he thanked me for what I was doing during our time when I met him. And I couldn't believe it. And I said, Gary, you're the modern day Bob Hope for all of us. Come on.
Yeah.
He goes, everything counts, Paul. Everything counts.
Yeah.
And so very humble man, easy to talk to, very soft spoken, easy going.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that one. So that was Grateful American by Gary Sinise. What's the second book of the flight today?
So this one is Fly the Flag for Me.
Okay.
And one of my sisters bought it for me. And it's by, and I hope I don't destroy her name, Joy Avang.
Okay.
And her husband was in the military, and she overheard some stories between her husband and some fellow troops of his talking years after they got out, and she was like, I didn't know you did all that stuff. And he goes, well, yeah, I did, and we did, and so she was fascinated by hearing her husband talk about stories to his fellow Marines, and what have you. So she decided to write a book and capture other veteran stories.
Okay.
So, like my friend Richard Fleek and the Scuttlebutt podcast, he does podcast interviews for veterans.
Sure.
She put it all in one book, and it tells veteran stories of those who are, not famous. Rest in peace, Chris Kyle. Rest in peace, obviously.
Yeah.
But are not famous like our war heroes are. And so she captures these stories in this book, and these are people you've never heard of, and she put them all in one book. And so I find that fascinating too, because again, it's more documentary type, individual based documentaries on people you never even heard of.
Yeah.
So
and I love that. I think people are absolutely fascinating. I think I owe that to my dad. My dad was a people person, and I grew up in Elgin, and we would go.
Well, St. Charles then.
Oh yeah, my aunt lives there as well. And but we would go, to it could be any place. It would have been like the Amoco gas station or this restaurant, and he would see 2 to 3 people he knew everywhere we went, because he loved people, and he loved hearing their stories, and he gave, you could tell he was a really good listener when you sat down in conversation with him. And I think people were drawn to that because they could tell their story.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's priceless. And I feel fortunate and blessed enough to have had my military experience because the connections that are well beyond your service days, the connections are just, so much fun to come across, and
I love hearing that you're still in contact with people you were in the military with, because I secretly hope, right, that these friendships that we've made along the way, they will persist over time, and that we will still, see and talk to one another. So even as a military spouse, right? Like I've also created a network, right? Even though I'm not the active duty.
Well, it's different now, right? Because now you have social media.
True.
So what happened was the folks that are in my Home Away from Home book, that we're actually meeting next month in Virginia.
Okay.
For our annual get together, be about 4 or 5 of us from Home Away from Home, the book.
Okay.
That are those folks that are in there. Social media. So the reason why we got all reconnected was through Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, and boom, boom, and the next thing you know, so staying in touch with people is easier these days.
True.
Than it was, prior to that. I mean, obviously, I'm singing to the choir on that. Everybody knows that, but
yeah.
That's how it happened for us, my group.
Well, let's jump back to our book flight here a little bit. So that was Fly the Flag for Me by Joy Avang. And then what's the last book of our pairing today?
The last book is called The Wisdom of the Bullfrog.
Okay.
Now, I am a huge fan of Admiral William H. McRaven.
Okay.
He made a commencement speech at the University of Texas years ago, and he talked about some philosophies, 10 things that you should do every day. And
okay,
so his book, without going too much off tangent here, his book is just a book about a bunch of quotes and stories that he wrote, where he can tie into his. At the end of each story or experience, he writes some philosophy about it, what you can learn from it, and leadership type stuff. And
oh yeah, I would love a book like this. I like these.
The Wisdom of the Bullfrog, and one of his things that I love. Here it is. Make your bed and see stories. So one of the things he says. And it makes so much sense.
Is he the Make Your Bed guy as well? There's a smaller book called Make Your Bed?
Well, this is the one that I have. It's a small book that he wrote, but Admiral was he was a Navy SEAL.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a Navy SEAL. He was in charge of all the Navy SEALs.
Okay.
This book is basically leadership made simple, but not easy. Yeah. So I'm interested in those kind of leadership type of philosophies and stuff as well. Again, what makes somebody trigger? How do you just being coming out of the Navy or military as a senior enlisted person or whatever, leadership's always something I'm interested in, even in my post-military days, in my other jobs and stuff I'm doing. But make your bed. That's one of the best things I ever heard him say. He says, make your bed every day. Why? He goes, because you can make your bed every day. And if you have a lousy day, he goes, when you come home, your bed has already been made. And that's nice. He's got a lot of great philosophies in here.
Okay.
So if you're into if you're looking, I don't care who you are, if you're a CEO at Apple, or you're a current officer or senior enlisted person in the military, or you're a manager at Walmart, or whatever you're doing in life, if you're you want to learn some things about leadership, and this is a good read. It's simple, short. It's not a really hard read, and like I said, after each story, he explains. He'll give you his philosophy after the story.
Okay.
After each chapter, and he always calls it simple. So one of the things he said in chapter 3, it's simple. Be confident, he says. These are his 3 recommendations that he has at the end of each one.
Sure.
He says, be confident. You were given the job because you have talent and experience. Trust your instincts.
Okay.
Item 2, he says, be decisive. Don't take too much counsel of your fears. Be thoughtful, but not paralyzed by indecision. And number 3, he said, be passionate. Show your employees you care about them and about the mission. I mean, it's common sense things, but he puts it in a book and makes you think about it. And if you can use some of these attributes that he speaks of for leadership in your own professional life, or if you're coaching the Pee Wee baseball team as a father or mother out there, you know how to lead people. And so there's my 3 books for you, Karen.
I love it. All right, so that was The Wisdom of the Bullfrog by Admiral William H. McRaven. I recently interviewed Captain Brett Crozier. Does that name ring a bell for you? He was the CO on the TR during 2020 when the COVID pandemic happened.
Okay.
And the email got leaked to the media.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And he has a book coming out. It'll be out by the time your show airs, but it's I think June 14th. I just interviewed him, and it sounds very similar to this last book you shared.
Yeah.
It's called Surf When You Can, and it's like tenets that he's learned through his military career and just life lessons you could take from that. And I read it because I was going to be having him on the show, and I found it even applicable to just my family life and how I manage my family, essentially, right? Yeah. And so, listeners, if you're listening to this, don't shy away from these military books because they are so applicable to life in general. So
yeah, exactly. That's well said, Karen. That's exactly what I'd like to get his book.
You can pre-order it now, and it'll be out June 14th. And I think everyone should read it, like including military spouses, because it gave me such a perspective on what is asked of the service members, right? Like I'm just the wife on the side, right? But my husband, he's being asked to complete a mission, and there's going to be times that he needs to focus on completing the mission, right? And like the family's going to just take a step back for like the next couple hours, right? And just to understand that as a military spouse was really good. I'm like, I wish I would have read this before we did our carrier days.
Well, and military spouses make such huge sacrifices for their military member that's on deployment. Military spouses, whether it's a mother or a father that's the non-military person, the sacrifices and the challenges that they face while their military member is away from home is just incredible. And hats off to you and all the military spouses out there, because it's impossible. And we know we could go on about stories about how military spouses, when it doesn't work, but I want to stay on the side where it's supportive, like in your case, and it's prospering, and it enables the military member to focus more on what they need to do while they're deployed, and and while the military spouse keeps everything running at home, and so the military spouse deserves a huge amount of recognition as well, not just the one in uniform.
Yeah. Yes, it's hard to receive that, right? Like you're like, oh
Yeah,
no, it's okay, it's just him.
yeah.
I also have one other dessert pairing. I was thinking of you, or sometimes I like to give people a thank you, a recommendation for you as well for coming on the show. So have you read the book called Tribe by Sebastian Junger?
No,
Okay,
I'm gonna.
he's the same guy that wrote The Perfect Storm. If you remember that movie.
Uh-huh.
He is, I believe he was a journalist to start, but he actually, this book is all about PTS and modern warfare, but he does a deep dive into it. And he goes into looking at, it's called Tribe because he goes and he looks at these tribal, various scenarios in life, right? I think he goes to Native Americans, he goes to sports teams, and he looks at what human behaviors manifest in these tribes, right? In the communities, like you talked about, the cooperation as a team, the working together, the interreliability amongst one another. And he looks at these principles and also in relation to our soldiers.
Oh,
And
wow.
so he draws from history, he draws from modern day, and he takes a look at the two and how, like exactly what you talked about, these veterans, yes, and how they have a difficult time when they are transitioning back home and what they're losing when they're going back home. And it's not saying you're losing like by going back to your family, but what you're losing from your tribe mentality when you return home. And so I found it wasn't a fairly long read, but I found it so fascinating.
What's his last name?
It's Junger. It's Junger. So, but yeah, I think he did such a great job with it. You can tell he did a lot of research. But it's a very compelling read. It's not a dry nonfiction read. And he talks a lot about how we can maybe help change like these social dynamics for the veterans. And so it's looking at, ways to hopefully improve that in the future. So I thought it was great. And I think you might enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out. Thank you, Kara.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so that was Tribe by Sebastian Junger. And I think there's a subtitle, subtitles on Homecoming and Belonging. So that's the subtitle of the book.
Okay.
Lastly, I love to finish our episodes with what I call our bonus pairings. So these are just a speed round of questions. You can answer these very quick. So where is your favorite place to read?
The couch.
Okay. All right. What is one book you have read that has changed your life?
I would say Grateful American.
Okay.
By Denise, because it just propelled me to support him more.
Yeah, absolutely. And then are you a rereader?
Not necessarily.
Okay. All right. And lastly, what are you reading next?
I'm reading Tribe by Sebastian.
Yay! Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it after you read it. So, and we actually did an episode. I learned about that book. I believe it's episode 15. I had a fellow military spouse come on and she did a whole episode on books related to combat veterans. So that whole episode you might find very fascinating because there was 2 other recommendations from her book flight. Okay. I just have not picked them up myself yet, which is why I recommended Tribe. But she did a whole episode on like PTS and books related.
Yeah, I'm gonna when I get the links and all that, I'll check it out. And my professional life, I read.
Yeah,
I read for a living, basically, in my other life. But yeah, relaxing on the couch with a book that, the other book I have is Charles Barkley.
Okay.
The basketball player.
Yeah.
So I got that book sitting on the nightstand underneath in our living area.
Okay.
And so I haven't. So there you go. It's a documentary again. It's a biography. And so I haven't really done anything with that one yet. But so I like sports. I like military. And I love Chicago pizza, and hot dog.
How do you take your hot dog?
No ketchup. If you just start with that, no ketchup.
There you go.
Yeah, no. It's a joke in Chicago. Well, as you know, you're Elgin,
Yeah.
so yeah, and I take it the Chicago style, with the relish and the peppers and the papacy bun and the onions, and the sports peppers, I guess I said, and then I don't put no ketchup on it. I put ketchup on fries.
Yes, yeah, listeners, if you have never been to Chicago, people get very passionate about the way they take their hot dog, as well as their pizza, and we're very passionate about our food.
Yes, we are. And we got and I married into an Italian family, so I eat good all the time.
There you go. Well, I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I so appreciate your time and for being here with me today.
Well, thank you, Kara, for letting me on your show, and great conversations. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation today with Pauly Freeman and his book flight of military-based books. We'd love to hear what other books you would pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. That is also where you can find more information on today's flight and any other books that we talked about today. I want to inspire a community of readers. So whenever you share a post about what you are reading or what you are picking up next, especially if you have heard about the book on the show, please tag us. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Bookish Flights. This is a brand new show, so if you enjoyed it, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give the show a review. Your review not only helps me, but it also helps the show reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure that you will not miss an episode. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.